Moscow's Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
August 20th. On a flight to Moscow, a passenger captures the awful wails of Alexey Navalny. The Russian opposition leader has suddenly fallen ill, and he knows exactly why.
I get out of this bathroom, turn over to the flight attendant, and said him, I was poisoned, I'm gonna die. And then I lay down under his feet and to die.
You knew in that moment that you'd been poisoned?
Yes.
Quick thinking from the pilot saves his life. Instead of flying on to Moscow, still 3 hours away, the plane diverts to Omsk. 2 days later, Navalny is flown to Berlin, where the German government announces he has been poisoned with the nerve agent Novichok. Now an exclusive investigation can reveal a top-secret mission tracking Navalny, involving experts in chemical weapons who work for the FSB, the Russian successor to the Soviet KGB. This nondescript building on the outskirts of Moscow was the headquarters of the operation.
We're staying in the car because we don't want to attract any attention. But this compound is part of the Institute of Criminalistics of the FSB, Russia's security service. And beyond that fence, an elite team of operatives has been tracking Navalny's every move for more than 3 years.
CNN has examined hundreds of pages of phone records and flight manifests that reveal the backgrounds, communications, and travel of the group. The documents were obtained by online investigative outlet Bellingcat, which 2 years ago identified the Russian military intelligence agents allegedly sent to England to poison former Russian spy Sergei Skripal. The FSB toxins team was activated in 2017, just days after Navalny announced he would run for president in the election the next year. The team's leader, Stanislav Makshakov, an expert in chemical weapons. Several of the team are doctors, but they weren't recruited to save lives.
I just wanted to show you some photographs here and ask you if you recognize, if you've ever seen any of the men in those photographs.
No.
You don't recognize them?
I don't recognize any of them.
Would it surprise you to learn that some of these men went on more than 30 trips with you over the course of 3 years?
That is absolutely terrifying. I don't know if terrifying is a good word.
I think it's a pretty good word.
Yes, but I understand how system work in Russia. I understand that Putin hates me, and I understand that these people who are sitting in the Kremlin, they are ready to kill.
Is it your contention that Vladimir Putin must have been aware of this?
Of course, 100%. It could have not been happened without direct order of Putin, because it's big scale.
In the weeks before he was poisoned, Navalny and his wife Yulia took a short vacation to a resort in Kaliningrad. Our investigation has uncovered that the FSB team followed. According to Bellingcat, the security cameras inside the hotel were mysteriously turned off while they were there. Navalny says Yulia felt uncomfortable. She took videos and photos of men she believed were following them. This man I also don't recognize, she says. Hours after the FSB's toxins team left Kaliningrad, Yulia suddenly felt sick.
She said, well, I feel really, really bad. Do you need ambulance? No. Do you have something? Is it heart? No. Is it stomach? No. Is it head? No. Could you describe it? No. And then we approached restaurant, and she said, well, I feel like worse in my life. I never felt it before, but unfortunately, and of course I couldn't connect these dots. Now I realize how bad she was.
Yulia recovered, but the FSB unit was apparently not done with the Navalnys.
In the days after Kaliningrad, cell phone data shows that several senior FSB officials were in regular contact with a lab in this compound. It's called the Signal Institute, and CNN and Bellingcat have established that it has been involved with researching and developing Novichok.
In mid-August, Navalny and his team traveled to Siberia. At least 5 members of the FSB unit make the same journey on different flights. In Tomsk, Navalny and his colleagues stay at the Xander Hotel. We traveled to the Siberian city to retrace his steps on the night he was poisoned.
So this is the room that Alexey Navalny was staying in, and it looks like my room here is right next door.
According to Navalny, he went to bed at around midnight after drinking a cocktail with his team. The FSB's toxins unit was not far away.
Using a ping from a cell phone, we've been able to place one of the FSB operatives in this area, just blocks from the Xander Hotel on the night of August 19th, the night that the nerve agent Novichok made its way into room 239.
Navalny left the hotel early the next morning. He boarded the Moscow flight feeling fine. 3 hours later, he was close to death. Back in Tomsk, Navalny's team frantically collect any evidence they can from his hotel room, including water and shampoo bottles, a toothbrush, and a towel. As they did, there was a surge in communications among the FSB unit and their bosses. If it was expected that Navalny would die on the flight, they were now scrambling to deal with a very different situation. After much back and forth, Russian authorities allow Navalny to be transported to Berlin. What they don't know is that the items recovered from his Tomsk hotel room were also on board. Some later tested positive for Novichok. Back in Moscow, we went in search of the FSB's toxins team.
So we're here now at the home of one of the FSB team, and we're going to go see if he has anything to say to us.
We enter a rundown apartment building on the outskirts of Moscow, where operative Oleg Tayakin lives.
Здравствуйте, Олег Борисович, да? Меня зовут Clarissa Ward. Я работаю в CNN. My name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN. Can I ask you a couple of questions? Можно вам спрашивать, это ваша команда отравила Навальный? Was it your team that poisoned Navalny, please? Do you have any comment? He doesn't seem to want to talk to us.
Toxicologists tell CNN that Navalny is incredibly lucky to be alive, and that the intention was undoubtedly to kill him.
So you've said that you want to go back to Russia.
And I will do.
You're aware of the risks of going back.
Yes, but I'm a Russian politician, and even when I was not just in hospital, I was in intense therapy. And I said publicly I will go back, and I will go back because I'm a Russian politician, I belong to this country, and definitely, which I Especially now, when this actually crime is cracked open, revealed, I understand the whole operation. I would never give Putin such a gift.
It is Tuesday, the 15th of December of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A small scant dash, a mere pinch of smoked hot Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. And it has, and it will continue to do so, more than oil. Maybe not as much as water, though. Without water, how do you get the paprika? Well, that's a story for another day, because we've got a lot of news in the news. Wow, Bill Barr's on his way out, and a lot of people are wondering if he was shoved, or is he jumping ship because it's too much crime even for Bill Barr. Well, I sort of think that maybe he doesn't want to get caught up as being complicit in any more crimes. And especially knowing how much Russia has been hacking into our whole government. I wonder, maybe that's what was spoken about in those meetings in Helsinki and elsewhere with Vlad that we know nothing about, because the transcripts were confiscated and in many cases destroyed. In violation of the Presidential Records Act, I might add. So was he passing off passcodes? Yeah, just go ahead. Take some money from Treasury. Take some money from Commerce. I owe you. Take it from there. And we'll just say, are we even? Are we good? Apparently not. Apparently he's not good. And, so there's that going on with Bill Barr leaving in the midst of Russia pretty much declaring war on us once again. Or is it just an escalation of the war that they had already declared? So we have that, as I mentioned. We also have still the outrage over Dr. Jill Biden being taken to task for having the audacity to put doctor in her name. How dare she? Well, that's a joke and a half, because look at what's happened in the last 4 years. And I'm not even talking about fake doctors like Gorka, okay? But just all of it. And they're going to complain about tan suits now. Joe wore a tan suit. What? Joe doesn't wear socks sometimes because he's cool. Okay? Yeah, he might be Joe from Scranton. But Joe's got a certain, flair, shall we say. Okay. Well, is that news? I don't know. Sartorial decisions is news now. All I want is for Jill to put Jackie O's, well, she wasn't Jackie O at the time, but Jackie's Rose Garden back. Can that be done? And that tennis pavilion? I don't know. Maybe we can make it into something else. Not that I'm against tennis, but it would have been nice to keep Michelle's Victory Garden. Okay, well, I don't know. Pick a plot that Melania did something. Maybe even that tennis pavilion. Put that all back to the Victory Garden. I would like to see electric generating solar panels at the White House. Now, back in the day when Jimmy Carter did it, they were not electric producing. They didn't have that technology then. All you could do was heat water, so you'd keep your hot water bill down. Now they can generate electricity. Put some panels up. You can actually disguise them now. They have that technology to camouflage solar panels, because some people think that's just so ugly. Which reminds me, when people complain about big wind power, it's like, how did birds survive hundreds and hundreds of years of farm windmills? Well, they have an answer for that, but it's still, I'm just like, how is it that windmills existed and no one complained about dead birds? Because birds don't get killed by it. It's propaganda, and I don't know what's wrong with wind power. I'll tell you what's wrong with wind power. it might keep people from buying fossil fuels. And we have to extract every little bit to the point that we pulverize rocks about a mile or 5 miles down in the earth. We pulverize rocks to get microscopic bubbles of gas out of the middle of rocks. That's how bad it is. We're at that point. At that point, I would say, that's a resource that we probably are spending more to get. And they say, oh no, look at all this natural gas we have. Yeah, until we don't. So, I like wind power. Because as far as I can tell, wind is only going to pick up with all the climate change. If you're going to have all these fire tornadoes, don't you want to harness the power of that? We oughta. Because it's the world we're going to be living in. Because Trump has left every single poison pill that he can conceive. And I'm not saying that he's actually conceiving them, but he's got a team that does. For instance, they're going to run out of money for the vaccine distribution 2 days after Joe takes office. And if Mitch McConnell has any choice in the matter, he's going to tell everybody, oh yeah, go on vacation for a month, 2 months. We won't meet up until after Easter. Don't worry. Russia's taking care of everything. They've hacked into every single one of our departments. Let them take care of it. They don't call him Moscow Mitch for nothing, okay? They don't. Well, enough of that rigmarole. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe as we start off? Well, as we started off, speaking of Moscow Mitch, and all that entails, because we got another convenient Russia story that just hit the wires. Well, starting off, that was CNN breaking down. Wow. They had a pretty thorough investigation into the Russian security service tailing Alexey Navalny, the opposition leader that Putin just hates, because Navalny, I don't know. He seems like a nice guy. He seems like, fairly liberal in some ways, but I don't know. But I like Navalny anyway, regardless. How can you not like a guy who keeps surviving these poisonings by Vlad? Well, CNN broke down almost minute by minute Navalny being cased by the FSB, the Russia Security Services. And they were confronted by, now that is investigative journalism. Actively investigating. Quite a story. And it has resonance here in America, by the way. What's on the rest of the menu? Federal and state authorities are cracking down on a wave of scams bilking desperate Americans during the pandemic because disaster capitalism does that. It's all a grift. Presidential pardon-seeking scofflaw, you like that? Ken Paxton is leading one last effort to completely gut DACA just before Joe Biden takes office. And the longtime aide to Putin's Congressman, Rohrabacher, has conveniently died from severe head trauma, suffered from one of those convenient falls. How convenient. And after the break, we move to the chef's table, where a record number of journalists were imprisoned worldwide in 2020 for simply reporting on the pandemic and opposition to whoever was in authority at the time. Sort of like the same old, except now we have the pandemic. And the World Health Organization is investigating a new COVID-19 variant that has emerged in England. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. homepage at netrootsradio.com. Off to the rightish of the page, right there by the social media scroll, deftly located by superior graphic design. Thank you, Tom. Is our chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln? And go ahead, chat. If you would then take a gander to the leftish of the page near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And that's there even because in this season of giving, I hate that. But anyway, in this season, I know that you have priorities, and only if you can. But if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds our way once a month, it allows us, and I'm serious, it allows us to pay our bills. And that then allows us to fly under the radar and continue with this powerhouse of resistance. And it looks, as I have mentioned before, we're going to have to continue resisting this damn latent neo-Nazi fascism stuff that apparently the neo-Nazis and fascists got the idea from here. Not only eugenics, okay? There's a lot of stuff that they came up with a lot of crackpot ideas that, well, percolated here. And we have to resist it. Because the only way to make a more perfect union, keep the ship of state afloat, is to, get to work. And part of that is resisting all of this decay. This corrosive element that wants to decay the ship of state. We have to rub out the rust. And how do we do that? Well, elbow grease. And apparently elbow grease takes a bit of money to be able to pay the bills. Because this is another thing. During a time of calamity, even Amazon increased their monthly thing for Prime. Like, that's going to be helping anymore. Why the hell does anybody use Amazon? Well, I do sometimes. Damn me. But anyway, ISP costs have gone up. Everything's going up in a time of turmoil and peril. But because of your generosity out there, and a few of you who have upped your generous monthly contributions to Netroots Radio, you have allowed us to continue our, resistance effort as the founders originally intended, so many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Tom made it easy. All you have to do is go to @Netroots Radio. Thanks, Tom. I, of course, take care of me, and you can find me at Justice Putnam on Twitter. And you might as well follow me there, because I do post the show notes and links diary on Daily Coz about 10 minutes before showtime. Not just for West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, but also for the Justice Department Music Sans Frontières, the music show that comes on Sunday nights. And look for that podcast, too, in the usual spots. Anyway, I do post the show notes and links diary on Daily Coz about 10 minutes before show times and get that out on social media like Twitter and elsewhere. So check it out. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc. Etc., etc. Whee! What a day. Oh! Now they're complaining that we can't use the term office of the president-elect. Like that doesn't exist. And even though there's pictures of Trump with the little banner that says office of the president-elect. When he was first elected way back when no one contested it. We knew, everybody in their sick grandma knew that Vlad put Trump into office, but we had to just take it because he won. Look, even when teams cheat to win, you have to live with result, and it sucks. But you come back and you beat them the next time. You don't give them any room to cheat. And that's why Trump is so mad right now. Indeed. Anyway, boy, what a day. We have a new president on our way. January 6th, they're going to still want to they're going to try something. They keep talking about June 6th, and I guess they're going to maybe go into legislators and elsewhere, wherever the actual certification when Joe is actually, said to be president, you're going to get inaugurated on the 20th. Maybe they're going to come in with an armed protest. Yeah, armed protest. Looks like insurrection to me. Anyway, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Is about scams. Now, we've been living with scams in politics for the last 4 years in such an exaggerated way, right in our face, as if that's supposed to make it okay. This first offering does come out of the Associated Press by Marcy Gordon. And it looks like federal and state authorities are cracking down on this wave of illegal schemes that have proliferated during the pandemic and prey upon desperation of people who have lost jobs in the outbreak's economic upheaval. I cannot tell you how many times these weird phone calls come in, hiding who they are, on the caller ID, or lying about it. Sometimes calls come in from numbers and actual people that we know, and it turns out to be a robot trying to sell us something, and really what they're trying to do is get my mom's information. She's not giving it to them, no matter how hard they try. The scams have ranged from the work-from-home reselling of luxury products to pyramid schemes soliciting cash and that play on cultural norms in immigrant communities, to fraudulent investment rackets promising quick profits. There's an old adage, if it looks too good to be true, it probably isn't. And there is no such thing as free money. Regulators yesterday, Monday, revealed what they are calling Operation Income Illusion. I think they need a better brander in their department, but that's just me. Now, this is a year-long nationwide law enforcement sweep targeting the scammers. Consumers lost an estimated $1 billion in schemes since the start of 2020, which beggars the question, how much have they made in the 4 years that Trump's been in office? Especially vulnerable targets are seniors and retirees, immigrants, Black and Latino people, students, and military families, pretty much all of America. Losses reported by consumers from the schemes rose to the highest level on record in the first 9 months of the year at more than $150 million. Officials estimate only a small fraction of the burned consumers report their losses to authorities. Yeah. These scammers are taking advantage of a desperate situation to rip money from the hands of those who most need it, while they're just taking their cue from the top. The FTC conducted the sweep along with 9 states, federal prosecutors in Arkansas, Arizona, and California, several local law enforcement agencies, and the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which, did you know that DHS has been hacked by Vlad along with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission? Did you know that? Why did Trump fire all those people in cybersecurity? Just recently, too. Back to this story. I still think it's all connected, okay? Now, that was Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosch said about there are people out there whose job it is to steal money. That's their job because they're earners. He said his office is seeing growing numbers of cases involving affinity fraud, a form of pyramid scheme in which consumers are urged to tap friends, family, and church or ethnic community members for money in addition to their own payment. A scam promoting investment in Bitcoin was among them, Frosch said. His office also has brought several cases against sellers of phony franchises. In addition to Maryland, the states participating in the sweep are Arizona, Arkansas, California, Florida, Indiana, New Hampshire, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. Gentleman Merchant of the AP brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A federal court next week is expected to consider whether to invalidate a program that shields from deportation immigrants brought to the U.S. as children, potentially creating complications for the incoming administration of President-elect Joe Biden. The challenge, scheduled to be heard on the 22nd of December in Houston, concerns President Barack Obama's original memorandum creating DACA, which currently covers about 650,000 people. That's more than 500,000 for those of you counting. Federal courts have already turned away Trump's efforts to end DACA. Under the order of a judge in New York, the Trump administration in December restored the program, as reported here at Netroots Radio and West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. So he was ordered to restore the program to its original terms under Obama, accepting new applications and full renewals of 2-year work permits and general protections from deportation. But the Houston case directly targets DACA's original terms, not Trump's efforts to end the program. Texas and 8 other states sued to end DACA, arguing it drains state educational and health care resources and violates federal law. Leading the lawsuit is, the crook, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. You know, he's been under indictment for securities fraud for 5 years, and he just keeps, as Attorney General in Texas, delaying the trial. Is that an abuse of power by a crook? I wonder. Well, he frequently brings conservative legal challenges, including the case seeking to subvert Trump's election loss that was dismissed by the U.S. Supreme Court. So he's got to find something else to be an earner, or he's going to end up like Bill Barr, without a pardon. Arguing in favor of the program is a coalition of DACA recipients represented by the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Both sides have requested an order of summary judgment to end the case in their favor. The Mexican-American Legal Defense and Educational Fund argues that Texas and the other states lack standing, the grounds on which the Supreme Court dismissed the state's election challenge. Hines of the Daily Beast brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and he is from the Daily Beast, and of course the Daily Beast has a lot of pop-ups, so I'll try to keep ahead of that. The longtime aide, Putin's Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, died suddenly from a head injury over the weekend. Paul Behrens was found by emergency responders close to his home on Friday night with severe head trauma. He was taken to a local hospital where surgeons fought to save him, but he passed away on Saturday, according to a spokesman for Rohrabacher. Behrens was a controversial figure on Capitol Hill who lost his job as staff director for the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee after the Daily Beast reported on his links to Trump Tower lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya's operation in the U.S. Rohrabacher's former congressional spokesman Ken Grubbs told the Daily Beast that Behrens died at the hospital. I did actually call Dana, and he confirmed it, he said. What I've heard is that he slipped, hit his head, and died in surgery. Grubb said there's no reason to think anything suspicious had happened to Behrens or that there was any link to his associations with Russia. No, not at all, he stammered. Yeah. Everything's so convenient, though. It's hard to dismiss maybe a connection with Russia. Behrens' son, Joseph Behrens, told the Daily Beast that no one had seen his father fall around 10 p.m. alone on Friday night, but that his older brother also I'd called Paul and rushed to the scene just 4 blocks from the family home when police came to his house. He was walking through the neighborhood, and then he went to the hospital from there, and then he passed away on Saturday, early morning. Behrens made headlines for the first time in July of 2017 after Veselnitskaya's explosive June 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Kushner, Trump Jr., and then Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort was exposed. The meeting subsequently shone a light on Behrens' own Russian entanglements. Behrens had traveled to Moscow with Rohrabacher in April of 2016, a few months before that meeting. In Russia, they were given a document from the Prosecutor General's office marked confidential, which included details of the Kremlin's battle against U.S. sanctions and a pro-Kremlin propaganda movie. When they returned to D.C., Rohrabacher cited those Kremlin's talking points as he delayed passage of the Global Magnitsky Act. Behrens then worked alongside Veselnitskaya and Rinat Akhmetshin, a Soviet Army veteran who accompanied her to the notorious Trump Tower meeting, to help deliver some of the suggestions made in Moscow. Veselnitskaya was later indicted by the U.S. for colluding with Russian officials to obstruct justice in an American court case. They worked together to organize a subcommittee hearing that would call the director of the propaganda movie as well as other witnesses who were sympathetic to Putin. The hearing, which was set to re-examine U.S. sanctions against Russia, was eventually quashed and replaced by a full committee hearing on Russia. Rohrabacher still succeeded in approvingly comparing Trump to Putin and submitting testimony that claimed Russia was not behind the assassination of Alexander Litvinenko, a former FSB agent who was poisoned with a radioactive isotope in London. Now, it was the next day after that meeting that Kevin McCarthy, who was House Majority Leader at the time, was recorded at a GOP meeting saying, "There's 2 people I think Putin pays, Rohrabacher and Trump." When colleagues laughed, he was heard on tape saying, "I swear to God." And don't forget, Paul Ryan then interjected, "Keep quiet. This is how we all know we're family." You know, like the family. A day after these events were recounted in articles at the Daily Beast and the Atlantic, a spokesman for the House Foreign Affairs Committee said, Paul Behrens no longer works at the committee. After being ousted from the subcommittee role, Behrens continued to work closely with Rohrabacher, who was later defeated in the 2018 midterms. Behrens, whose political career began as an intern for Rohrabacher in the 1990s, was most recently a partner at Rohrabacher's lobbying firm, R&B Strategies. You know, like Rohrabacher and Behrens. Well, he's conveniently dead. In a very Vladian way, too. Questions will still arise. Well, that brings us to our break, and we ought to take that break. So let's go to our break, and when we get back, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. Tired of having to reach for your night vision goggles when you want to track someone's heat signature after dark? Well, biotech may someday come to the rescue for all of you aspiring spies, because researchers have developed an injectable nanoscale antenna, which they've used to allow mice to see beyond their normal visual spectrum and into the infrared. The work appears in the journal Cell. Like all mammals, we humans are only able to see light in the visible spectrum, which includes all of the colors of the rainbow. That limitation is due to the photoreceptors in our eyes being only able to detect radiation with a wavelength of around 400 to 700 nanometers, which means we can't see infrared and near-infrared light, which has wavelengths a little bit longer. And that got scientists thinking.
So we always are curious on whether we can use any method or technique to allow us to be able to see near-infrared or infrared light.
Tian Shi, of the University of Science and Technology of China. He reached out to his colleague, Gang Hong, at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, who engineered a teeny-tiny device which he calls an up-conversion nanoparticle.
We actually develop nanoparticles, so-called up-conversion nanoparticles, that actually can effectively be active by this near-infrared light.
Then they started testing their system in mice. The nanoparticles attach themselves to photoreceptors in the animal's retina. There, they absorb infrared radiation and convert it to visible green light.
This green light is observed by retinal cells,
which the brain then interprets as regular visible light. This enhanced supervision allows the animals to not only see in infrared, but to discriminate between different infrared patterns. So, for example, they could be taught to navigate toward horizontal stripes versus vertical ones, patterns that the researchers themselves couldn't see. Even Shi found that a bit disconcerting.
When we do the experiment, sometimes it feels a little bit creepy because, if you do not wear night vision goggles, and when we do the testing, we show the pattern to the animal. In fact, to our own eyes, we cannot tell any near-infrared patterns. But the inject animal could. They can use those patterns to guide their behaviors very accurately and efficiently.
Hong says that the advanced infrared detection did not appear to interfere with or supersede the animal's standard-issue visual abilities.
So treated mice were able to perceive these light patterns even in the daylight conditions, clearly suggesting that the nanoparticles were working in parallel with conventional visible vision as well.
The technology, in addition to its applications in military or law enforcement, might even provide a possible fix for color blindness. And best of all, Shi notes it wouldn't need batteries.
This new nanoparticles technique is stealthy and it do not need external power. The nanoparticle directly be activated by the near-infrared light itself.
The nanoparticles remained active for as long as 2 months. A similar infrared boost could someday allow us humans to break through our natural visual limitations and see things in a whole new light. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? But did he balance on that big chair? Or...
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1921. That was the day Kansas National Guard troops marched into Crawford County coal fields to quell the Mother's March. 8,000 miners went on strike that September to protest the jailing of their United Mine Worker District leader, Alexander Howitt. Howitt was found guilty of violating a statewide strike injunction for calling workers out on strike in 1919. Governor Henry Justin Allen had established a state industrial court which ruled strikes illegal. Howitt's members considered it a new kind of fugitive slave act. They likened their jailed leader to a modern-day John Brown. The United Mine Workers opposed the court and the increasing number of unauthorized strikes. Many district leaders were divided over this protest strike and chose not to support it. The strike also divided the membership, and some went back to work. Conditions worsened after 3 months until the striking miners' wives took matters into their own hands. They met in Franklin to organize a march that would effectively shut down the mines. Their numbers grew from 500 that first day to over 4,000. According to Benjamin Guzin, for 3 days the women stormed area mines, obstructed traffic, and assaulted workers. When met with resistance, they threw red pepper at scab workers and overturned their lunch buckets, showering the miners with coffee and what had been intended as their midday meals. 4 companies of National Guard troops, including a machine gun division, arrived to stop the march and break the strike. The press derisively referred to the women as the Amazon Army. Many women were arrested, but mobilized their newly won voting power to unseat anti-labor politicians the next spring. As a result, the state's industrial court was ruled unconstitutional. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
I'm Mark Boulanger. Conditions for workers in Palestine have become even worse with the collapse of the economy and the spread of COVID-19. To bring more public awareness to the problems faced by Palestinians, the British union Unison conducted a global webinar. Unison is the UK's largest union with more than 1.3 million members. One of the participants in the webinar was Ria Al-Sana. Ms. Al-Sana is a research coordinator with the Who Profits Center, which focuses on corporate involvement in the occupation of Palestinian land. She was asked about the state of the Palestinian economy.
The Palestinian economy is collapsed. There are no, at the moment, job-generating sectors in the Palestinian economy. The most of people work in the service sector. And so if you look at the agricultural sector, for example, in the 1970s, 40% of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza were employed in agriculture. Today, we're talking only about 6.1% of Palestinians. And so the ability for people to find employment and for the ability for the Palestinian territories to create jobs has been completely decimated by Israel's prolonged military occupation and colonial rule. The OPT suffers from some of the highest levels of unemployment in the world, over 25% pre-COVID. And in the West Bank, unemployment is less than in Gaza, but this change or difference between Gaza and the West Bank is predominantly down to the absorption of Palestinian labor in the Israeli job market. As we know, since 2006 and the imposition of the blockade on Gaza, sea, water, air, and land blockade, no workers have been able to kind of exit Gaza for work. I mean, people can barely exit Gaza for any purpose, but certainly not for work. And mostly it's been concentrated on workers from the West Bank and East Jerusalem. So we're talking about over 133,000 Palestinians coming to work for Israeli businesses in the West Bank, in the settlements, but also in Israel. These workers amount to around 18.5% of the West Bank's labor force. So they are a significant section of Palestinian workers. When we're talking about Palestinian workers, 18.5% of them don't actually work for Palestinian businesses or businesses centered or positioned in the West Bank or East Jerusalem. They're working for Israeli businesses in the settlements and in Israel proper. And of course, the entry or access of these workers to those jobs is not an easy process, and it's definitely not a simple process either. For a Palestinian to access these jobs, they have to have a permit. Permits are essentially a security process. You have to give all of your biometric data to the Israeli military. You have to go through a checking by the Israeli military. If you're an ex-prisoner, you cannot get your permit. We know that a huge amount of Palestinians are imprisoned arbitrarily and so on. Permits also can't really engage in any job that you want to engage in, right? It's not like if you're a doctor, you can go into Israel and become a doctor in Israel if you get a permit. Israel only allows the entry of Palestinian workers for specific sectors where it has a lack of workers. And it's mainly manual work. So they're doing manual work and they're doing dangerous work. And the majority of them are employed in the construction sector, they're employed in agriculture, and they're employed in also factories, so manufacturing and so on. These workers, you get your permit. It's not an easy ride. Every day you have to cross highly securitized checkpoints twice a day, going to work and back from work. This means that you have to leave your home at early hours in the morning, get back to your family at the late hours of night, and then start all over again the next day. And at the moment when we're talking about COVID and people are talking about social distancing and being safe and hygienes and all of these kind of recommendations of how we can keep ourselves safe, they're not really tenable for Palestinians. I mean, if you looked at pictures from the checkpoints at 3:00 in the morning, you see thousands and thousands of workers queuing in to go through the checkpoints to access their jobs with no sense of protection.
And that's it. Labor news you can use. You can find our international features and daily newscasts at radiolabor.net. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of only 43 to 45. We have showers right now and have been having them for a bit overnight. Winds will be light and variable throughout the day, and looks like we might get just about 1/10 of an inch of rain. Cloudy overnight with lows in the upper 40s. Winds will be light and variable. Possible chance of sprinkles overnight, then rain likely in the morning tomorrow with winds out of the east-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Highs in the mid-40s, looking like about 3/4 of an inch of rain tomorrow. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon remain at 4,017, with deceased confirmed at 37. We have not seen any updates on these totals for almost 2 weeks now, and something is up. I don't know what it is. Pollen is rated at none right outside the window here at the mothership. The air quality index for the region is moderate at 52 parts per million because people are burning wood to keep warm. And the daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.27 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 52 and sunny. Paris is 53 and fair. Rome is 56 and sunny. Kyiv is 34 with fog. Kabul is 29 with its ever-present winter smoke. Hong Kong is 53 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 40 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 71 with heavy rain. San Francisco, California is 46 and partly cloudy. And New York is a crisp 36 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Those anonymous worker bees, this time at Reuters, bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A record number of journalists were imprisoned during 2020 as governments cracked down on coverage of the coronavirus pandemic or tried to suppress reporting of civil unrest. At least 274 journalists were in jail as of December 1st, the most since the New York-based group, and that group was called the Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ, began collecting data in the early 1990s, the report said, up from at least 250 last year. Protests and political tensions were the cause of many protests, with the most made in China, Turkey, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, it said. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, authoritarian leaders tried to control reporting by arresting journalists. At least 2 journalists died after contracting the disease in custody. It's shocking and appalling that we are seeing a record number of journalists imprisoned in the midst of the global pandemic, Executive Director Joel Simon said. The report blamed a lack of global leadership on democratic values, and in particular, attacks on the media by Donald Trump, which it said gave cover to authoritarians to crack down on journalists in their own countries. Globally, 34 journalists were jailed for what governments called false news in 2020, compared with 31 last year. While no journalists were in prison in the U.S. as of December 1st, 110 were arrested or charged in 2020, many while covering demonstrations against police violence.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
More anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The World Health Organization is aware of a new variant of COVID-19 that has emerged in Britain, but as of now, there is no evidence the strain behaves differently to existing types of the virus. We are aware of this genetic variant reported in 1,000 individuals in England, the WHO's top emergencies expert Mike Ryan told a news briefing in Geneva. Authorities are looking at its significance. We have seen many variants. This virus evolves and changes over time, which pretty much means we need to stay ahead of this virus with our vaccines, and how we are able to do that? By more science. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.